خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين عليه الصلاة والسلام يتمنى هذه المنزلة. فعوا وعقلوا ما هي هذه المنزلة التي يتمناها خير البرية عليه الصلاة والسلام. يتمنى أن يكون شهيدا، والذي نفس محمد بيده لوددت أن أغزو فأقتل ثم أغزو فأقتل ثم أغزو فأقتل. فهذه الحياة الطويلة العريضة يختصرها الذي يوحى إليه من رب السماوات والأرض سبحانه وتعالى. هذا النبي الكريم الذي يوحى إليه يختصر هذه الحياة بهذه الكلمات: يتمنى هذه المنزلة. فالسعيد من اتخذه الله شهيدا.
The launch of the group Al Qaeda as a beginning, in which many people are not made aware of. In this video, we will be talking about the early formation of a group that is generally misunderstood. In early 1979, as Osama Bin Laden was finishing college, the Islamic Revolution in Iran overthrew the Western-backed Shah from the CIA. The following November, the radical movement swept into Saudi Arabia itself with the takeover of the Grand Mosque in Mecca by armed Islamic extremists. It has been reported that one of Osama's half-brothers was arrested as a sympathizer of the takeover, but was later exonerated. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan that same year gave Osama bin Laden new direction and purpose. On the advice of his royal family, he threw himself into providing financial, organizational, and engineering aid to the Mujahideen, who were also heavily funded by the United States. Some, including Richard Clarke, the counterterrorism head during the Clinton and Bush administrations, believe he was handpicked for the job by Prince Turki Al Faisal, head of Saudi Arabia's Secret Service. The Pakistan ISI won a Saudi prince as a public demonstration of the commitment of the Saudi royal family and as a way to ensure real funds for the anti-Soviet forces. The agency fails to get royalty, but bin Laden, with his family's influential ties through his father's business, the Saudi Bin Laden Group, was good enough for the ISI. Clarke will later argue that the Saudis and other Muslim governments used the Afghanistan war in an attempt to get rid of their own misfits and troublemakers. This multinational force later coalesces into Al Qaeda while in the Sudan. By 1984, bin Laden had moved to Peshawar, a Pakistani town bordering Afghanistan, and helps run a front organization for the Mujahideen known as the Maktab al-Khidmat, which was initially constructed by Palestinian Imam Abdullah Yusuf Azam and an Algerian Mujahideen, Abdullah Anas. The MAC has funneled money, arms, and fighters from the outside world into the Afghanistan war. The Afghan Services Bureau, nurtured by Pakistan's State Security Services, the Inter-Services Intelligence Agency, and the CIA's primary conduit for conducting the covert war against Moscow's occupation. Bin Laden becomes closely tied to the warlord Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, leader of the Hizb-e-Islami, and greatly strengthens Hekmatyar's opium smuggling operations. Hekmatyar, who also has ties with bin Laden, the CIA, and drug running, has been called an ISI stooge in creation. According to controversial author Gerald Posner, ex-CIA officials claimed that General Akhtar Abdul Rahman, Pakistan's ISI head from 1980 to 1987, regularly meets bin Laden in Peshawar. The ISI and bin Laden form a partnership that forces Afghan tribal warlords to pay a tax on the opium trade. By 1985, bin Laden and the ISI were splitting annual profits of up to $100 million a year. The CIA, ISI, and bin Laden build the Coast Tunnels complex in Afghanistan. This will be a major target of bombing and fighting when the United States attacks the Taliban in 2001. It will be reported in June 2001 that bin Laden worked closely with Saudi, Pakistani, and U.S. intelligence services to recruit Mujahideen from many Muslim countries. But this information has not been reported much since 9/11. A CIA spokesman will later claim, for the record, you should know that the CIA never employed, paid, or maintained any relationship whatsoever with bin Laden. This statement could not be verified nor neglected. It also could not be proved. On August 11, 1988, bin Laden conducted a meeting to discuss the establishment of a new military group, according to notes that are found later. These notes and documents would be known as the Harmony documents. Over time, this group would become known as Al Qaeda, meaning the base. The base, which is an Arab base, meant for training Arabs only, since during the war, Afghan bases were the only ones that were run by Afghans. They did not invite Arabs. However, certain warlords would allow Arabs into their ranks, but under Mujahideen, Afghan Mujahideen leadership. Abdul Rasul Sayyaf and Gulbuddin Hekmatyar. According to Ann Sterenson's book, Al Qaeda in Afghanistan, in chapter 1, she revises what began Al Qaeda's initial start. Quote, the foundation documents indicate that Al Qaeda was founded as an international organization and its operations were not limited to a specific national territory. Al Qaeda's area of operations was the Muslim world. Its goal was simply to fight for Islam, or to lift the word of God to make his religion victorious. The struggle had no end state, except to overcome their opponents till the last of them fights with the Antichrist. But the method of Al Qaeda, at least initially, was to participate in frontline fighting in Afghanistan. This is a fact which has been rather underappreciated in existing literature, because we tend to see Al Qaeda as an international terrorist network instead of seeing it for what it was at the time, an elite Muslim combat unit which would spread the sentiment of jihad by participating directly at the front lines and by promoting a culture of martyrdom and self-sacrifice. This is why bin Laden's first project as an Al Qaeda leader was to find a new location for the Masada camp. In late 1988 or early 1989, bin Laden sent a small group of fighters to the Nangarhar province in eastern Afghanistan. The group was led by a Yemeni veteran of the Al-Masada battle who went by the nom de guerre Abu Tariq al-Marabi. According to an eyewitness, their task was to research new positions for al-Masada. Abu Tariq gathered a handful of fighters and set up a small base in the eastern part of Nangarhar, in one of the many side valleys that run from Kabul Torkham Highway into the massive Spingar mountain range on the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. According to some sources, Al Qaeda's Shura Council was divided on whether to participate in the Battle of Jalalabad. The battle was seen as politically dubious due to the involvement of the Pakistan ISI, and the Arabs did not have the adequate skills to contribute on the ground. They could perhaps support the Afghan Mujahideen with artillery, but nothing more. But what led to the creation of al-Masada? According to Ann Sterenson's book again, Al Qaeda in Afghanistan, quote, "It was the happiest days of my life," said Bin Laden about October days in 1986, when he started work on a remote construction site in the Jaj region of Khost, Afghanistan. The site had been discovered by Amari, one of Bin Laden's associates, on a reconnaissance trip he had taken with a group of Afghans the month before. The most amazing thing about the place was that it had a direct line of vision to the Soviet fort at Ali Kel, situated next to the strategically important Par-Chinar Gardez highway, and no one was there, neither the Soviets nor the Afghan Mujahideen. The place later became known as Al-Masada, the lion's den, and would play a central part in Al Qaeda's mythology. But at the time of its founding, there was little to suggest that this would be the birthplace of the world's most dangerous terrorist organization. Bin Laden's construction team consisted of 4 men in a bulldozer, a tent, and 3 reluctant Afghan guards. The original purpose of the project was to build a forward base for the Afghan Mujahideen stationed at Jaj Base, some 5 hours drive to the south. A Sudanese fighter named Jamal al-Fadl would later become an informant against Al Qaeda and Bin Laden and testified about the events of 1980s and 1990s. He claims that a meeting was held by 10 men, about half of them Egyptians. One of them was the head of the Egyptian militant group Islamic Jihad, Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri. Al Qaeda will be tied to al-Zawahiri and the Islamic Jihad from the very beginning, and the 2 groups will formally merge in early 2001. It would take US intelligence years to realize a group named Al Qaeda exists. The first known incidents of US intelligence being told the name will come in 1993, when an individual by the name of Ahmed Ajaj would try to enter the United States through JFK Customs. And while his searchings were being looked at by custom guards, they would find a document with the name Al Qaeda on them. This is the early insistence of a group named Al Qaeda, who did not have an international organizational threat or enemy. They were initially a training camp for Arabs in their fight against the communist regime in Afghanistan. They would later become a more formidable organization with a much more nefarious agenda behind them when Bin Laden was forcibly evicted from Saudi Arabia, in which he then relocated to the Sudan under the watchful eyes of the Central Intelligence Agency and the Pakistan ISI.